Hi, my name is Vijay Kashyap, and I'm having a 13 years of experience. I'm a founder of bitacloudinfotech. So, my team and I designed this SQL Server course to help you to understand SQL Server. Also, we have included all the theoretical parts, all the knowledge you need for cracking the interviews. So, we have designed this SQL course with the simplified examples. Let's see how we can help you, and let's get into the SQL learning. Okay, so let's understand now how to use this SSMS tool. Here, this is just a client tool. It's just a software which connect us with the SQL Server. In our previous videos, we have already demonstrated about how to install SQL Server and how to install SSMS. So now, in this part, we are going to understand what is actually a SQL Server. Okay, so I'm going to connect. So now this client tool, which is called SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio, which have me connected with the SQL Server. SQL Server can be in local or can be in the cloud. Cloud in the sense just somewhere online, and we are connecting through the proper authentication. Now, little bit introduction, what you get when you install your SQL Server initially. So these are the 4 different types of system databases. Before we understand these system databases, let's understand what is the database. So you already know, if if you see a normal notepad file, you store some information in a notepad. If you have seen Excel, you know how the Excel works, rows and columns. So basically what we are trying to do, maybe it's your notebook, where you make notes, where you note down people's phone numbers, maybe in 90s, but now everybody use phones, right? So it's just matter of storing the data. Now, storing data is very much easy. It's no problem, right? Nowadays, we store everything on the internet, on the drives, and as a digital copy, right? Now, the only question what we have is how much secure our data is, when we store somewhere. So our phone, we have a lot of security. Nobody can access our phone, right? Now, coming to the database. So database is nothing but allowing your data to securely stored on some specific drive, but nobody can access, nobody can encrypt or decrypt, whatever is there, and get your information. So database is a concept with EF code. So we have another blog on EF code. What are the rules? How he invented? He's a great guy. But today we are going to understand what exactly a SQL Server and the database is. So database is just like how you store the data in any file, Excel or anything. In the same way, Microsoft SQL Server is also providing an MDF file. What is MDF file? .mdf, like how you have extension in the end of every file, .csv, .txt, .xls, right? You must have heard extension of a file, present the file type. In the same way, this concept, storing the data in one file, then again, it's no different than storing the data in Excel, but it is much organized, much secure, much accessible, much readable, much easier way to store the data. Now we understood it just any other file, how we have used in SQL Server or Notepad. It's the same with the databases. So now let's see, when we install, what are these 4 databases are referring for, why they are there. Definitely they are there to serve some purpose. So let's see, let's see, there is a master database. So master database is nothing but which holds, it's a copy. It's a particular centralized database which holds everything what we do. So it's a master database. Now model is nothing but created by a system. When we install first time, you will see these 4 databases. So model is nothing but it's an empty template. Whenever you create a database, from where it make a copy, how it refers, it does not create itself. So it is an empty template. Whenever we say we need a database, our own, maybe for your business, maybe for your some project or anything, when you create something, from where it referred, from where it copies from the model and paste it into your environment, or maybe whatever commands you give. So model is just a template. Now coming to MSDB. MSDB used to be, suppose we wanted to perform some activities, maybe we want to perform the loads, maybe we want to process something, we want to process some data, we want to do some activities, some actions. So MSDB is meant for those kind of activities when we load the data, when we want to process and do something. Okay, now coming to the TempDB. TempDB is very interesting database. So sometimes we need the data, but we don't want to store it. But we need it temporarily basis, maybe for some minutes, some hours or something. So how it help us? It help us to store temporarily the data in somewhere specific location. Once we are done, it automatically removes, like how we do so many things every day, but you can't store all the things what happens today. You can't remember all the things, but few of the things you remember. If something is very important, you store that into the physical primary drive, right? In the same way, Microsoft also designed this to store the useful informations into a separate database. But for the temporary, this is the temp database is being used. We will learn all these things in a details also in another video. For now, I think this introduction is enough. What is the database? Now, what is a server? Server is nothing but a particular machine where this particular software is installed and understanding us. We want something to get stored and we need a space, we need a drive, we need an operating system, we need a computer, we need a laptop, right? In the same way, server is nothing but a particular machine which is serving clients. Basically, who is the client? Suppose I need the data, I'm the client. Some other person is injecting some information and wanted to store some data, he is also a client. But he is inserting the data, means he wanted to store some data. I want to retrieve some data, so I'm the receiver side. I'm also the client. But there is some centralized location, centralized machine where we store the data, we retrieve the data, we also modify. Now, so this is a machine. Now, many of my students ask me, how in 90s, how it used to be, when Oracle and Microsoft launched together, Oracle stored everything into the one database. It was not divided or distributed its own different project, different stream to the different databases. But Microsoft came up with this concept, and now you can have for your own separate storage, you can have separate database. So Microsoft always comes with more user-friendly approaches, which is much more simplified for learning. Now, coming back to this, a server is basically a machine where we have installed a Microsoft SQL Server. So it's kind of a software which get installed as a Windows application. Now it also has a services where it accept the request for inserting. It also provide for if something you need. So it's doing both the things. Okay. So now we are good. If we have to connect to a server, definitely we have connected. You can see on the screen. And the second thing is, now let's see what else we need to know before we actually deep dive into it. We need to know few concepts. We need to talk to the SQL Server, right? So how I'm talking to you? So we are talking in the language of English, correct? You are understanding. In the same way, Microsoft SQL Server understands its own language, which we call the structured query language. Now, if you're doing some transactional, you put transactional before, so it becomes T-SQL. We'll understand what is transactional and what is the normal talking term with the SQL Server. So let's understand. If you want to talk to a SQL Server, let's understand the language which SQL Server understand, of course. Now you will be thinking, oh, do I need to learn different language? No, it's still in the SQL, but it understands the specific keywords, specific commands to talk to the SQL Server. It's very simple. So we are going to teach you that, and my team has prepared a lot of blogs on our website. It's there, LearnSuperEasy.com. All the blogs you can find it there. Now let's start with what's the first step? First step is learn the words, learn the keywords understand the data type. Before I'll explain you what is table, what is column and rows. Okay, let's understand the data types. Now you'll be thinking, what is the data types? Data types means in our daily life, we use many different things. So let's understand with the help of our document and the blog, which my team has prepared. The beta team is really much dedicated that everybody can learn with a simplified example. So we are so much putting our energy in that particular area that if somebody is seeing something and somebody is learning from us, we make sure that we at least start with the simplified approach, and definitely we will make that person touch the advanced once that person is comfortable with the basics. Okay, so let's get into the data types. Okay, so today, now we are going to learn data types. So basically, data types are nothing but a particular format. A particular format, what we wanted to specify something. Let's say you deal money in the money term. It's a numbers which you count. So it's a mathematical format, 0 to 9. In the same way, when you name a person, you name with the words, with the alphabets, right? You call it string. So in the database terms also, we call it a string. But what is more convenient to the SQL Server? So the person who designed SQL Server, basically it started with the EF code. There are 11 rules, what we have to follow to understand the SQL Server. But before that, let's understand the data types. So I hope you understood a little bit of hint which I gave. If we have to talk to someone, we at least should know it's the person name, it's the amount which we are giving, it's the phone number which we are storing. Everything is a different format. If you are telling the coordinates, you follow the different term when you describe the coordinates. If you are telling the time, you describe the different way, right? If you are combining your address, suppose you say your home address is 51 Street and this city, California or something. Then you are mixing up integers, you are mixing up basically numbers and your alphabets. So we call it alphanumeric. Okay. So now let's understand how SQL Server basically understand and how SQL Server has designed and divided these format into how many types. So let's first get familiar with this type theoretical. Now, when as a fresher you wanted to know SQL Server, you make sure you start with SQL data types. Don't directly jump into any other advanced topics. Okay, so we are going to learn from a document right now. This is also available on the blog in our LearnSuperEasy website. Okay, now let's understand data types. So as I already gave you some of the examples, that it can be numbers, right? Numbers you are much familiar, right? So let's start with numeric data types. So numeric comes under many different formats. Big numbers, decimals means which are in dot, 1 point something, real, decimal, small int, which is very small size of integer, int, big int, So in the numeric data types only, we have divided the numbers into many different formats which SQL Server understand. Then you will be thinking, why I have to know 7 different things when it's only a number? Now you also have to think about how the world market is growing, how the businesses are growing, how we are growing. If you see the population, right? And if I'll give you one hint, for one person, do you know how much data you generate every day with your mobile or IoT devices? IoT devices, do you know? It's in millions and billions. Your locations, what you are clicking, what you are watching, what trends you are seeing, how many platforms you uses in your mobiles, how many links you click, how many videos you watch. You see, a single phone is creating how many information you can't imagine. Now, if you see one person 24 hours, how many we are which we are using smartphones, right? So you see the way the data is growing. In the same way, suppose sometimes depends on your growth of your data, depends on of your understanding the business, you need a different format for the different specific purpose. In the same way, Microsoft SQL Server says, if your future expectation or that particular format is small, use different numbers, different numeric data types. If you are having the large expectation for your future growth, use big. Now, why still I go for that? At the end of the day, it also matters. If you are storing it more, you need you need to pay more cost, right? If you are keeping your storage limited, you have to pay the less cost. So what is more efficient? Choosing the right data type. Okay. Also, I'm going to tell you one more story about the data type, but first let's understand a little bit one or two different data types, and then we'll get into it. That's a very wonderful story. I generally I tell that to all of my students. Okay, that why choosing a data type is so much important. Okay, let's see. Now, we will first start with int. We call it integer. So if you see the range, this is the negative range to the positive range, right? It means if you choose an integer data types, then this much range it accept as a numbers. You can keep it stored. You can store that particular range data into that particular space. We'll talk about what is space, what is variable, what is the storage capacity of a particular, where do we apply data types? First understand, then we'll see where to apply. Okay, so now big int. Now suppose your purpose is very big. You wanted to know the distance between the moon and earth, right? Sometimes you wanted to store that somewhere, right? We don't know. It depends on your business purpose. We don't know. Okay. So in that case, you need to go with big int. The name suggests. Do you think it's much more difficult? It's very simple English. Int and big int. Okay. The small int. Suppose you just wanted to store your weight. How much weight you are. Okay. Decimal. Decimal is sometimes few things are in fractions and points and decimals. Definitely, it's a theoretical parts. You can also see the link below, which is our blog link, which you can see all these details if you wanted to learn more on this theoretical part. Okay, so today we are going to definitely do the practical, but before that, it's important that you know the theoretical knowledge about the data types. Okay, float, real. It's very rare that people will use these two, but it's good to know. There is something minor differences between decimal, float, and real, but that's not the objective of this particular session. Okay. Now, what is the another interesting data types where we need alphabets, words? How do we represent in SQL Server? We call them character data types. Okay. How many they are? We can represent with the short name, right? Definitely, SQL Server doesn't want you to keep, type all the letters and, waste your seconds there. So with the short name, we'll go with care. Where care. Where care, there is actually term which was introduced in 90s and it was continuing with the where care, right? Generally, it would have come up with anything string or something, but they adopt this where care from the 90s. So it's keep going to support the 90s and 2000s databases guys, and the person who was doing coding at that time, they were having a where care, so they continued. Okay. Now, the another thing is text. Text, right, is a simple alphabets and words and everything. Okay. Now, so care is also a fixed length character. What is a fixed length character data types? Where if you say 10, it's 10. Even though you supply 5, it still store the 10. So it's a fixed length character data type. Make sure what you are choosing for your particular need. Okay. Now let's say varchar. On the other end is a variable length character data types. It means varchar. Suppose you have defined 100, but you are only put 2 characters, A and B. Then it will only hold the storage for A and B. So which is more sufficient? Where can? Okay. Now text. Text is something where you can store large amount of text, large things when you have in your mind. If you need some big storage, that time you can use text. Now, I hope these two are familiar now. Okay. Now let's see third one. What is the third thing we use as a format? We use as a format is, okay, sorry, let me put it on this focus. I am sorry. I should have done that earlier. Okay, no problem. Okay. So what you see on the screen is date and time, right? Either you talk to a person with their names, you store numbers, amounts, phone numbers in a numeric format. But if you have to tell the time and date, you use a specific format, date and time, right? Okay, so here we are. So SQL Server also understand the dates and time. Okay, so there are three: date, time, and date time. Date is nothing but which I don't need to explain you. Now different countries follows the different format. UK follows DDMMYY. US follows MMDDYY. What is MM? Month. DD is day. YYY is year. How the date shows in your bottom, right corner of your desktop or system or laptop. It depends on which country you are in and which time zone you have set. If in India, people follow both DDMMYY, MMDDYY, because of UK influence for 200 years. Okay. Okay, so let's see. What is the date time? Date time is nothing but a combination of date and time. Sometimes we need it both. We want to store it the both way. So then use this. If you only want to store time, use that. Okay, timestamp. Timestamp is more than the date time. In the world, we have different time zones. We call it Asia specific. We call it USA, EST, PST. You know all this. So we follow different timestamp. So Microsoft SQL Server also support, if you want to store the date with the time and with the time zone, then you will be thinking, what do I do with storing the time zone? I'll tell you. Suppose you wanted to buy something in US, right? The data get stored into the US system or maybe server. Now, what particular time zone it will store? But maybe you are buying from some other country, maybe from New Zealand. Now, New Zealand time is different and your storage time is different. The way server store the data once you place the order on Amazon or many other websites. Now, if you want to retrieve your information, then when did you place the order? After 3 days, your order got delivered. And now you wanted to see when did you place the order? Now it will show the US time or New Zealand time because servers are available in US, most of the servers for many different activities. Now you'll be thinking, when did I place midnight order? I placed in my daytime, right? So this is what importance of storing the time with the time zone. So when you will see it, it will convert that time based on your local region time, and it will show you, is the proper actual time when actually you place the order. So it's important that this feature is given to us. Okay, now let's see. Interval, I will not talk about it. It's not that important. Binary. If you're not comfortable with the binary, it's mostly 0 and 1. It's also when you have a blob, when you have var binary. I'll tell you what are these. Suppose, what do you think? How the image gets stored into a digital in your phone? Do you think it's stored as an image? How a video, a movie, gets stored into a hard drive? Do you know? I don't think so. So most of the guys, we think image is an image, video is a video. But in a hard disk, it actually converts machine understanding language, and then it store the data. Your hard disk only understand machine language. which is nothing but a binary. It may be different binary languages, hexadecimals and many other, there are many. I don't want to go into the mathematical format. This is a SQL part which we are understanding. But we need to know how our data gets stored. It's an image, it's a text, it's a videos, it's a photo, it doesn't matter, it's a coordinate. It actually gets converted by the SQL compiler, then operating system compiler, and then with the machine language, it gets stored into our hard disks. Okay, so now it's nothing but 0 and 1 in many other formats. So binary is very important data types, which was given later, not initially when Microsoft launched in 2000, 2005 and before 2000, Slowly they understand the need and then they launched it. Okay. So suppose tomorrow you wanted to convert, as an application developer, suppose you wanted to convert some image, you will convert into the binary and store the binary into the database. This is the way. Okay, so this is important for the application guys, for the person who is in web development. Okay. Okay, so now we know the 3 different types. If you want to know, interested more about theoretical part, definitely go and check our blogs. Boolean, you also know Boolean, right? Boolean means, what should I say, true and false, yes or no. Sometimes we say 0 or 1. We also represent with yes and no, true and false, right? The same way we call it Boolean data types. So how do we define? If you want to store these kind of values, let's say, are you a citizen or not of USA or maybe in wherever, whichever country. So you can say yes or no, but you can't say nothing, right? Either yes or no. Okay. So for those kind of things also, we have data types, right? Okay, so now you can see, you can represent as a Boolean, and then bit. Bit is nothing but store the data as 0 and 1. And bool, definitely. So it's a short, light, super lighting, we call it a bool. Okay. Okay. Now choosing the correct data types for a column, it's very much important. We haven't talked about column, but definitely in our mind, we have that we wanted to store this information. We want to store some information, but we need to pick a format that is nothing but data types. So it's very important to choosing the right format. I'll tell you why. This is a NASA real story which I'm going to tell now. Okay. So let me see. Yeah, this is the end of the document. Yeah. So NASA was designing its, I think, 11th or 12th project for basically launching a rocket. Okay. And it was, I think, tons of heavy weight. So they were doing all the calculation. They hired many juniors and seniors in that particular project. That time there was no much higher budget, but they were managing. There was no technology. There was no many programming languages. There was not much knowledge is available about about how to handle a proper coding or how to test through your code. So one of the intern who designed this calculating the pressure on the rocket, which is in the lower part of the rocket body. So he picked there was only 4 to 5 data types that time in that programming languages. Maybe it's very Ruby or some language he has written. So he picked the small data types, small in the sense which can hold only numeric limited limit, like how we have seen 3 different types: int, big int. You have seen, right? In the same way, he chose, instead of big int, he chose int. Let me show you on the screen. So you remember, right? We talked about these 3, small, big. So he chose this instead of this. Now, when they were testing the code offline, means it's not launched yet. It's not on the top. It's still on the earth. So what they can do, they can only assume what pressure it can be on the rocket. So his code was passed through the test cases. Test cases is nothing but passing some assumptions as a parameter values. And is the program failing or is it giving any error? So it was not giving an error locally. But when actually it actually take off, and when it actually held the pressure, it was calculating A multiplied by B means something, against the speed it's trying to calculate. A multiply B, and that's the pressure on the particular thing and how much energy it needs and what engine it has to fire, what particular things it has to do. So look, the team which is on the earth, they can only do, do these commands, if some weight and some balance is not margining and something is not balancing out, they can only do some actions. So they need to know what's the pressure. So this developer has written that code A multiply by B equal to C. It means to calculate the pressure, A multiply by B, what's storing into the C. Now C's capacity is only to store 6 digits of character. But the actual pressure when A multiply by B is more than the 7 numbers, 7 range of numbers. So there is an error to calculating and storing the data into this particular variable. So now this program is crashing. This small piece of code is crashing. And at the end of the day, they try to restart from the earth. They try to restart the program again and again so that they can recalculate the pressure. If based on that, they will do some action and it will go more up and then do the things what it is meant for. So they were not able to do the next item because it was stuck. It was in the loop. They're restarting, again it's in the loop. It's not able to do. It's crashing. So at the end, they lost the connection due to this continuous error. And it was a failure mission of NASA, you can see. Do you know how much hit? It was $6 billion was wasted. $6 billion that time. Was wasted just because of choosing the wrong data types. So now when you choose some data types, I hope you can remember this example, how important for your business means not your business. You're working for someone, suppose if you're getting a job, remember how important it is a data type can be by a developer. So make sure you choose the right data types. Okay, that's the end of the story. So there's a lesson learned from everything, right? So it's a lesson. Now we need to be more careful when we choose a data type. Okay. So now in the next session, let's understand a little bit about what else we can get started with understanding the database. Okay. Thank you.